Welcome back, ladies and gentlemen. Many of you are not here yet, so I can't welcome you back. I hope everyone is refreshed after a cup of chai or coffee. And I also hope all of you have been connecting with your friends on Facebook and tweeting using our hashtag ET Women's Forum. Our next panel, ladies and gentlemen, is Women Entrepreneurs, a personal favorite, the new wave. I'd like to call upon Archana Rai, editor, South, The Economic Times. Welcome, Archana. Our panelists for this session are: she is the CEO of Portia Medical and Growth Story, also the co-promoter of several new age internet technology startups in India, including BigBasket.com, Bluestone.com, MustSeeIndia.com, BookAdda.com, and OnlinePrasad.com. She is Meena Ganesh. She is the founder and CEO of Nykaa.com, the leading cosmetics site for domestic and international beauty products in India. She also serves on the board of blue-chip companies like Tata Motors, ACC, and Dabur India. Please welcome Falguni Nayar. She is managing director of Kalari Capital, is on the board of several companies, and has nurtured successful startups like Dream 11, Snapdeal, and Urban Ladder, which are redefining the landscape of Indian businesses. She is Vani Kola. And finally, after Bodhi as a moderator on our first session, he is the managing director for Southeast Asia and India, Google, since 2011, and he has personally invested in over 20 women-led startups. Please welcome our first male panel member, Rajan Anandan.
Thank you, and welcome once more to this one-of-a-kind forum, where we hope we'll find answers to something that has sort of engaged all of us ever since women have begun to play an ever more important role in workplaces, in society at large, and across millions of homes, of course. How do women find parity in all of the main things that make for success, in access to capital, perhaps to start a business, to find that better job, to have pay parity, and most important of all, to be part of the decision-making process, and to be, to be paid commensurate to what they bring to the table. So I can think of no one better than the four of you here to discuss this. And while it comes to punching above their weight, all of you do that. But most of all to Falguni, thank you very much for, coming here, even though it must have been difficult to make it. And in the fitness of things, I thought, Rajan, we could begin with you.
For parity?
Yeah, for parity. And just to make a point about how we are inclusive.
Yes, I'm glad to see that.
So you've invested, Rajan, in a slew of women-led startups. I think you have sort of stepped up to really fill a gap that is quite obvious in the area. Just about 3% of women-led startups actually get venture funding in India. So what influenced your thinking?
Yeah, I think, well, I grew up in a household with very strong, powerful, dominant women. My mom and my wife, who are both entrepreneurs actually. So that was part of it. Second, somebody asked me this question about 4 or 5 years ago. How many women founders have you backed? And the answer wasn't terrific. So I've always believed that if you focus on something, you can get it done. So actually that night I sort of thought about this question, and starting then I just said, look, I'm going to consciously look for amazing women building interesting. I mean, I only invest as an angel in technology companies, right? So it was really that. And then what was amazing was that from then on, I've invested in quite a number of women-led companies, right? And the one thing that I've talked about this a bit before, if you look at India today, I know on an absolute percentage basis, the number obviously needs to improve significantly, but across categories, we have actually about 10 or 15 categories in India where the market leader is actually an Indian, is a women-led or a women co-founded startup, right? And that's actually quite interesting. And also, if you look at unicorns, one of the few unicorns we have in India is founded by Radhika, ShopClues. And actually, the first profitable unicorn in India is standing right here. Is Falguni, right? When she goes public, she'll actually be the first profitable unicorn.
Not
if she goes,
unicorn yet.
not unicorn yet, but when you do, right? So, no, don't worry. I mean, I'm not going to invest. I unfortunately didn't get to invest. And then you look at a whole set of segments, right? Whether it's, the angel list of India is Let's Venture, is Shanti, whether it's Wishberry with 2 co-founders, and the list goes on, right? So I've been quite impressed to see the kind of companies that women are building. But that's how, I got started because basically somebody asked me this question, and I think it's important to prompt.
So what is the number now?
Oh, I can't talk about these numbers, but it's many dozens actually.
Okay.
It's many dozens. So, and the other thing that I found is, I don't really segment and do the analysis by gender type of startups, but what I find is, in my portfolio, the women-founded companies, they tend to actually execute better, and they talk less. It's an amazing thing. In fact, one of the things I think media can do, and even for all the women founders in the room, you should actually promote yourselves a little more. Because I find that with men, I mean, long before they even have a product, they think they've arrived. You haven't launched anything yet. No product, no traction, right? But with the women founders, I find that they focus a lot more on just building the company, building their teams, right? So I'll give you an example. Social Cops, they're based in Delhi, and is one of the most interesting big data companies. And Prakalpa and Varun Prakalpa is the CEO. She's all of 25, 26 years old, right? Nobody really has heard of them. But they'll actually be one of the first billion-dollar big data companies out of India. Incredible, like 60, 70 people, truly deep tech. Don't talk about stuff. Just focus on tech, build the company, get clients. They don't call on VCs, by the way. VCs call on them because they're building this amazing thing, right? And literally I have dozens of these examples where they just focus on building the company, right? And which is fantastic. But I think one thing that maybe, starting even with the media, with y'all, and it's great, by the way, it's wonderful that you're having this forum, is just talk more about these, because I think what I think a lot of women need is also just role models, right? Just hear about these stories.
Yeah.
Because Sachin and Binny and Vijay and, all of them really, because after they became successful, if you're a 22-year-old IIT engineer graduating today, you want to build a company, right? And I think talking about these amazing women role models, 3 of them are here.
Right here.
I think would really help, because more people, more women, then I think we'll go out and start building
This is really
companies.
what this forum's all about in that sense,
Yeah.
To showcase this. So, Vani, there's a question that I think I want to particularly ask you. Is gender a factor when you evaluate a company? You've done everything. You've been an employee. You've founded a company, more than one actually. You're now an investor. So how much does gender at all play a role when you evaluate a company?
At our firm, I don't think gender plays a role when we evaluate a company. At least it doesn't play a negative role when we evaluate a company. And we have openly, internally talked about questions on, If the woman is at a certain age bracket, the question that always comes is she going to be serious about her company? Is she going to be able to balance? But those we, have a living example internally. So I say, guys, I mean, that's not how we should look at it. So I don't think that plays a role in particular in our firm. But my opinion on this has shifted over time. I think when I was younger, I used to think that gender didn't play a role in in having hurdles to success. But over time, as I've talked to more younger women, and as I kind of reflect back to the nuances, I do think there is a role of gender that perhaps is an unconscious bias, to put it charitably, right? And I think it does play a role. The question we need to ask ourselves is, if you want to be a path breaker, and we need path breakers, and we have talked all day today about people who have broken the glass ceiling and who have achieved something despite many hurdles. I do think you need that, and there you need to put blinders on. You kind of have to ignore those hurdles and be able to say from your deep inner conviction, they don't stop me from being who I am. And we need those in order to pave the way forward. But in tech, especially in the context of tech entrepreneurship, I think the bias is less towards gender. That's, my perspective.
Meena, I'd like for you to weigh in on this, given your firm itself is called the Growth Story. So is there a particular amount of, for lack of a better term, an affirmative action that's required to increase the number of women-led startups itself?
Sure. So my own experience in working with women entrepreneurs, being one myself, has been pretty positive from our own stable of companies that we have promoted. 4 out of 12 are women-led, so it's been pretty good, and they are extremely successful women, done it very well. Freshman who's Rashmi Daga is one case in point. That said, I think the situation outside, in terms of the number of women-led companies that are coming up for investment, or ideas that are coming up driven by women, is still not adequate. So one of the reasons why you don't see so many women entrepreneurs is not many women are wanting to become entrepreneurs. I think we need to do something at a more broader level to encourage women and to say this is a very good option for you to consider. And to Rajan's point, role models are important, but we are not the best role models for a 22-year-old, to be honest, okay? We'll feel way too distant and too difficult to reach. You need role models at every step. You need role models of another 25-year-old, like what you were talking about, who's done a great piece of work. So is that something that I can aspire for? You need role models of women who have been 25 or 28 when they started, they went through their marriage, childbirth, all of that, continued through all of that and still built a business. Very successful. And there are plenty of those which we need to highlight, but the more you have those kind of aspirable role models, it becomes easier for women to say, yes, this is a path that I could also take and perhaps can get some success. I think the other part is the societal expectations of women to settle down by the time they get into the middle 20s. I think that has a very important role. It's easier to take a good role in a nice corporate because things are probably more predictable, and so you are more marriageable, if I may use this highly, it's a reality, right? There are a lot of families that still expect that. So you need some changes to happen at that level also for women to be given permission, and for women to take that permission also, saying that I want to do this, and that's all right, I will figure out how I navigate the other expectations from the society. So both need to work hand in hand to move the needle, because unless there is enough of volume of people wanting to be entrepreneurs, we would never do this. In the corporate world, we did make some change, and you see lots of women in the entry level. So the problem is a little different there. How do you prevent women from dropping off? Here, how do you get more women to enter?
Get into it at all. Falguni, when it comes to sort of breaking glass ceilings, you've done this over and over again. What were the particular challenges that you may have, sort of faced? Because, for instance, like Meena mentioned, women have even the burden of expectations, societal expectations as well, in addition to all of the challenges that they face at the workplace.
Sure. What I've seen over the years, very often I used to be asked, is there a glass ceiling, and is there a, can women make it in the corporate ladder? And, do women directors contribute effectively? And I thought these were all ridiculous questions. And I feel that women need to actually, in the ridiculous in the sense that I do feel that if women lean in and they want it for themselves, they can achieve it all. And I personally do feel that women, and that's our message, like Nykaa also talks, all our customers, many of our customers are women, and we talk to our customers, and one of the important message we give is that, like a lean in, but in a different way, saying learn to dream for yourselves and pursue your dreams, and you'll be amazed at what you achieve. And I think women are looking for that kind of empowerment, and what we find is that with that kind of a message, we are finding that women like there are a lot of women working in my office, so many of our customers also, they all, like the word Nykaa means you be the actress of your life, let the spotlight of your life be on you. And we are finding a lot of women, both the ones who are working in my office that I see closely or even our customers, they are optimizing life for themselves. And I'm really happy about it, because for too long women have been the support system of the family, and they're always trying to fit into a milieu and not wanting, they're not bold enough to dream for themselves. And once they start dreaming for themselves, they will see the difference and they will be happy with what they achieve. So I feel that that is the starting point.
Rajan, if I could just come back to you, like in the world of startups and technology, for instance, there is a certain pride that these companies are the ones that are shaping the future of the way all of us will work, live, play, and so on. But there are very few women involved in that decision-making process. What will it take to get more women into actually deciding, building these products, and sort of shaping this, taking decision-making roles?
Yeah, look, I think when it comes to startups, right, I think to Meena's point, we need more women founders, co-founders, right? I think that is the key, right? Because at the end of the day, for a long period of time, whether it's 5, 7, 10 years, after the founding of a company, I mean, the key decision makers are the founders or the co-founders and the management team. So I think the more women we can get to start up, I think the more women you'll see. I think in technology more broadly, as again, I think has been mentioned, there's really, there's two, if you look outside of core tech, meaning computer science, right? There are actually quite a number of women, if you look at business functions, right? Marketing, sales, etc., business development, there's, the representation is actually pretty good. I think it's really in the core computer science, product and engineering functions where the representation hasn't been as strong, right? And there, I think it's really two things. More women in computer science. By the way, that's changing. For instance, in India now, there are more women in computer science. I don't know whether you all know, but if you go to the IITs now, the representation has changed dramatically, right? So we need to continue to work on that. But then we need to make sure that they stay, either if they're going to stay at companies, whether it's big companies or medium-sized companies, that they stay through the first 5 years, 10 years. You make it easier for them to come back. And then for the entrepreneurship angle, it's actually quite different, right? So, for instance, at Google, we're very focused on how do we retain. For us, the question is how do we retain them over 5, 10, 15, 20 years, right? How do you make it easier for women after childbirth, after giving birth to come back, right? How do you make that easy? How do you make it much more flexible, and so on and so forth? But I do think it's actually quite different, because I think for startups, ideally, when you're 25, 30, 35, how do you get women to really start those companies, right? And give them the courage to start up, have a supportive ecosystem. I think the support structure is very, very important, right? It's interesting. I'll give you an example. I don't know whether Neha is here, but founder of Moojik, which is the leading music in-store music streaming company. I remember I invested in like 4 years ago, and I was meeting with her. And by the way, it's amazing. When you meet these women, you can tell in about 15 minutes, because they've eaten you out. I mean, it's just like, you can't say in a word, you've got it, you have no idea what you're talking about, right? Which is fantastic. That's what you want, right? It's that. And so I said, so why are you doing this? She said, I don't want to get married, right? And I told my dad, I'm building this company, and once I build this company, then maybe I'll think about it, So, and obviously the dad was very supportive, because she's from a small town, and she was able to do that. So I think the support structure is very, very important, right? How do you get parents, husbands, brothers, and so on, to let women go out and pursue their dreams, right? I think a few. If you look at India, I think very few homes still have that sort of supportive model, right? And how do you build that sort of culture of support? I think is very, very important.
Vani, if I would come back to you, how does one make it easier for women? Does the system need to make it easier for women?
I don't know if the system needs to make it easier for women necessarily, because that would mean that there is something that, like you said, in the class of an affirmative action or something. I don't know if that works or doesn't work. But we can each, in our roles, make it easier for women. I think if I go back to my own life examples, honestly, there were a couple of board meetings where I had to have my 5-year-old sit in a corner coloring just because that day that was the situation. And do you have the, I don't even want to say, do you have the freedom to do that? Do you have the space where you can integrate your life? Because the age where you need to find this perfect balance has lots of demands on a woman far more than on their male counterparts, right? So do your work environments, do your home environments, do your colleagues understand that or don't? I still remember we had a road show and my daughter was 6 weeks old and I was breastfeeding her at that time, and we traveled with her, and first my VP of marketing was aghast. He said, we are going to do 7 cities and we have a 6-week-old. I said, it's all going to work out. And in fact, he was a champ and a trooper, was willing to sort of go along with the whole flow. So I'm just saying, I think we need to be willing to integrate our lives more. I don't think we can separate home and work as two separate aspects of our life. And if your work environments don't provide for that, I think you should go talk, ask for that change to happen. So I think if there is anything we do systematically, I think it is about saying that it's okay. For very long time, I'll tell you a funny thing. I remember we were working on a very critical project that had a deadline, and our VP of Business Development, this was when I was running a company, not in my venture capital firm now, our VP of Business Development said, oh, tonight I can't work late because I have a date with my wife, right? And I was thinking, and everybody's like, he's a cool guy. Have the women say that, I can't work on my project deadline because I have a date with my husband, I don't think that's going to work. And, so I think, and I've always asked myself, is this something we have imposed on ourselves? And I think for the longest time, sometimes I would feel my personal needs cannot come into my workspace because then they will think I'm lesser, right? True. So I think most of the women will put themselves through a grind, not bring their personal needs, talk about it, and try to be those superheroes. And this notion, I used to love saying, oh, I'm a super mom, I can do it all. Right now, I don't want to be a super mom. I tell my kids, I'm not a super mom, I'm just a mom, I'm flawed. Take it or leave it. You can't leave it, so you have to take it. So, so I think there is this notion that we have to be super everything, and I can have it all. Why should I have it all? I can only have a few things that I want. Why must I have it all? So, there's a part of I need to be Martha Stewart, a domestic goddess, and I need to be breaking glass ceiling, and you know what? I can roll out hot samosas in the evening, and I think we put that on ourselves. And as I've gotten older, I've asked myself these questions. And if there is anything I can pass on, I have 2 daughters, you know that, Archana. So I don't really want them to, try to put themselves through this stress of wanting to be all, And it's okay if you're just focused on something and do that. So systematically, it's the mindset. And I believe the mindset first is yourself. The system around you will change, or you can force change. But you have to first start that with yourself. Whether that is saying, I'm not going to get married at this age, or I will get married, but I will also do this, whatever that is, the internal change. And how do we encourage, provide conversation, support?
So Falguni, I'd like for you to come in at this point and say, is it really the responsibility does it lie with the woman? For instance, in scaling a company, a lot of women might choose then to say, I will not scale beyond this point because I want flexibility, So
yeah, I used to
that?
think like that, and I said that women need to lean in, but I'm seeing very different women today. And we have a beautiful ad called Haseen Tu, Haseen Din, and what we say there is that today we have a defense minister who's a woman. We also, in terms of like, you know, very often you see pilots who are women or women in science, as well as, you know, today you can be an actress and a mom. I mean, so we actually tell women that these are better times. Times are definitely changing and these are better times for women. And especially the age group that we deal with as our customers, which is 22 to 35, we are clearly seeing that. So I personally feel that yes, women need to make that choice to want more for themselves, and that is the starting point, and then everything else can fall into place. But I already see it happening, and it's happening in a big way. So if I were to just give a quick example of number of people in my company, we've had last year about 3-4 women going through pregnancy, and of course government has now given 6 months maternity, which is great. I wish I had it when I was young. I took some unpaid leave. But, you know, I think I was really worried because I didn't want to be unfair to them. I'm very, you know, in the company we're very meritocracy driven, and I didn't want to be unfair to them because they'd had the baby. But many of them have given me no chance. They've come back so committed to work, and they're really, I can see that they're committed. They're traveling, they're coming into work, and of course, once in a while when their moms are not there to support them, they are staying at home and working from home, and we can see that. So they've given us no chance to really not take them seriously, and I'm seeing more and more of that with young women, and I'm so proud of that. You know, it's really good to see that. Like, I think and that is what is needed for women to really make the difference, you know.
Meena, in your case, for instance, you kind of nurture, like you said, 4 out of the 10 that you've backed are women-led startups. Correct. What are the conversations that you have with them when it comes to, for instance, scaling a company, being hungry for more capital, perhaps? What are the conversations you're having with them?
See, what I find is that none of the women that we work with are looking at scaling as something that that needs to be restricted because of their gender. I mean, it's really the conversation that I had is this business scalable? How fast should it scale? What is the most appropriate way to scale it? And what is the capital required for that? I haven't come across women saying, you know, but that would mean that I need to work few extra hours or I have to travel more. Now I don't think I'm able to do that, so let's not do that. I just haven't come across those conversations at all. So I don't think I am seeing that at all. That said, I think the population of women that I am meeting are probably also from the more privileged and better supported class. I think we really need to take this conversation beyond that to the smaller cities or people who are not so lucky to have society saying, yeah, go for it, husband saying, yeah, I am there behind you. You don't have that support. There are enough women who live still in joint families or expected to still be the ideal bahu while doing whatever else is there in their mind. There is a reality. I think it's important to give them voices, give them courage, give them a societal platform, give them the kind of ecosystem that will tell them, it's okay, you can do it. You're absolutely capable of doing it. Let's see how we can push you along. So I think the people in metros, yeah, they are set. The girls are very smart, and I see that in my daughter and their groups, and they're all set. They are very clear in their head. They want to do this. No force of nature can stop them. But that's not true for most of the women around there. So they are the ones who need a lot more of voice and support.
So staying the cost really, Rajan, seems to be the issue, because at entry levels, I think everyone agrees, be it startups, be it large corporations, or even campuses, women are pretty much ubiquitous these days. But what will it take for them to stay the course and to break all of the ceilings that the ladies here have broken?
Yeah, I think, look, from a company, you know, if you're in a company, right, meaning an employee in a company, not the co-founder, I do think, one, you should pick the right company, right? Because my view is today, you know, if a company is not flexible, they're not supportive, just don't work there, right? Because there are enough options in the world today where there are enough companies that really care. I think once you're there, look, I think it's very important to have a sponsor, especially for women, right? Because I find, you know, I'll tell you, like at Google in India, my CMO, my co-head of sales, my head of PR, my head of legal, I think you get the idea, right? Like, I mean, like, you know, like literally 50% of the management team. And you know, it's very, you know, several of them didn't, you know, I had to ask, saying, you should do this, right? My CMO runs India and Southeast Asia, and, you know, she's on the road most of the time, right? And she has several kids. So, so it's important, I think, to have sponsors who just say, look, you should do this, you know, and because sometimes, sometimes you may be questioning, you know, can I do this, and so on and so forth, right? So I think having a sponsor is very important. Flexibility, I think, is very important. I completely agree, I think, with the panelists here where, you know, the millennial in India who lives in urban India is entirely different.
True.
They think they can rule the world, which they can. They don't have a care in the world, which is fantastic. And they basically don't think there are any barriers, right? So I think so that's very good, right? You need to make sure that they keep that spirit, right? So after, you know, if they need to take some time off, having flexibility and so on and so forth. So I think whether it's work policies, whether it's sponsorship, and then having the right kind of forums of networking and role models and so on, right? And then at Google, for instance, because of our tech focus, you know, we have many programs for women in tech, right? Where we kind of want to make sure that they have the right technical skills, we have the right so on and so forth. So I think for big companies is one. I think for startups, it's really about, I genuinely believe it's having more role models. That is the single most important thing, right? We need to have 20, 30 women, you know, 3 of whom are here, who basically all of India looks up to and says, you know what, I want to be like that, right? My daughter who's 12 needs to say, you know, there are 5 or 6 of these women, you know, I want to be like that. I want to build companies like that, right? I think that's the role model. The other thing would be, you know, also having more venture capitalists like Vani, right? I mean, Vani's invested in many of the most successful women-founded companies. Also, I think having more, like for instance, right, it'd be great to, like, in the US now, there are women, Vani may or may not agree as a venture capitalist, but there are funds that only invest in women. I'd love to see more of those, right?
Exactly.
Because see, once you raise $100 million and you have to only invest in women founders, you have to find them, right?
Absolutely.
Because you can't go deploy them in men. So then, you know, make the whole thing easier, right? And you may or may not agree from a pure financial standpoint, but I genuinely think those, like for instance, I've invested in a couple of those funds in the US as an LP, right? And it's fantastic to see the kind of companies that are being invested in, right? So I think it's a combination of things, but I do think we should separate, because what it takes to keep you in a corporate environment for 20, 30 years and get you to the boardroom, I think are quite different from how do you become an entrepreneur and then scale and build the next, you know, big company.
So role models, access to capital, more, you know, sort of women-focused investment funds. And I think also, as you said, it's also the mindset within a woman itself that you can't really.
Add one more thought is that women who take breaks from large corporates, when they want to come back, this might be a great opportunity for them to get back. So creating some kind of a program to say entrepreneurship is another idea, another opportunity that you could pursue while you're coming to return. So
Great
that's
point
another
to end with. Thank you very much for being here today. Thank you. Wonderful discussion.
Thank you to our panelists, women entrepreneurs. A relevant point that was brought up in our last panel was the importance of role models, and yet the idea that we ourselves impose the label of a superwoman on ourselves. So where is really the right balance? Our next speaker is a young lady who has recently made us very proud on the global stage. India's 6th Miss World and reigning queen, she supports several causes, including fighting anemia in her home state of Haryana. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome the newly crowned Miss World 2017, Manushi Chillar.
Good afternoon, everyone. I think the first thing when I came to know that I'll be speaking over here is that I was actually cursing my stars because I know nothing about economics. I'm a science student, so I'll introduce myself. So you all know my name. I'm Manushi, and I come from a family of doctors, and I'm studying to be a doctor as well. I'm 20 right now, and I have been honored to be your Miss World for this year and carry out her duties. Growing up, I had a very normal childhood, like any Indian girl from a middle-class family would have. I got my education, I had my siblings, and then suddenly overnight my life changed, and now I'm here. So we just had a panel about women entrepreneurs. And I know the word entrepreneurs sounds scary because you start thinking about all business, which is something I don't understand. But I think being Miss World and being an entrepreneur is quite similar because you have similar goals. You want to bring change. I think change is something which is, to me, it's synonymous with being an entrepreneur. You love what you do, and you love risks. And being a Miss World is definitely about taking risks. Like, I came up here to speak in front of you, which was a very big risk for me. But I think most importantly, we don't let other people tell us how we're supposed to work or how things should be done. We take our own decisions. And I think all those entrepreneurs out there must congratulate themselves because it takes a lot of courage to do that. Women are doing wonders as entrepreneurs. Recently I read in Kerala about a system called Food on Wheels. It was providing employment to women, so they would provide tiffins and nutritious food to people who wanted to work. But out of all these wonderful entrepreneurs, I think one such wonderful woman is my mother. It's not hidden from the world how much obsessed I am with her. We all are with our mothers. But I believe that all mothers are entrepreneurs. And I did look up, I'll be very honest, I looked up the definition of an entrepreneur on Google. we have the head of Google here, right? So, just on stage. So I looked it up on Google, and I realized that being a mother is very similar to being an entrepreneur because you set up a system, which is a family, and you invest, you take risks, and you actually have the most important job of rearing up the future of not your family or not of an individual, but of the entire world. And that is a very tough and a very risky job to do. So for me, all mothers are entrepreneurs. On the Miss World stage, in my top 5 round, I remember when I didn't know what was happening that day. It just felt like another rehearsal to me. And the moment I reached to top 10, that is when I saw my parents, I saw my family in the crowd, because I was trying to spot them the whole while. And they were coming down to give an interview. And at that moment, I knew it. I knew I was going to do something great tonight. And the moment I reached to top 5, I remember someone telling me that, it's all right what happens tonight. Don't be nervous because you've come to top 5 and you've made history. You are the top 5 in Miss World 2017, which is a big, big, big thing because coming from a girl who, being a girl who never really wore heels or who never knew how to even apply an eyeliner, it was a very big deal for me to be out there. But the moment I saw my parents and I saw how proud they were of me, I knew that even if I don't walk out with the crown, I knew I was going to be a winner tonight. And that's how my answer came at that moment. And believe me, had you asked me anything, even if you would have asked me who's the president of India, I would have said mom because I was so emotional that time. But definitely mothers do deserve the high salaries because, like I just said, they are... I remember one thing from my economics book is that humans are the largest resource. And I mean, mothers are taking care of that resource of the largest capital any country can have, which is human capital. So going away from that, I think we all know, for me, my mother is a superwoman, and she's a working mom. She's a neurochemist, so very disciplined in life. But at the same time, she's the most compassionate, the kindest woman that I've ever known. She's not only my mom, she's my best friend. She is my role model. She's someone I've looked up to growing up, and she's my guardian angel, my Durga Ma, I call her. And I know that she lets me take decisions. She lets me make all kinds of mistakes. And when I come home, I know that even if I might not at that moment think that I won. For that moment, I might think it's a failure, but you know, she's there for me when I come back home. And it's not easy when you have two worlds to balance, because I'm very proud to say that she has done amazing as a doctor. She's an amazing doctor. But at the same time, she's never made me feel like she didn't have the time for me, or she's always been there for me as a mother. And this is something that a lot of women out there, all the women here have been doing, who are mothers as well. And that is something that has always amazed me as a child. That, I mean, I don't know how you can balance two wonderful things so perfectly without even having a hint of worry on your face. Having said this, I think I feel that aren't women already the most powerful? They're entrepreneurs. They're creating the future of the country. So they're already the most powerful. And when it comes to women empowerment, I think they must realize that they have such a big responsibility, which they're doing kick-ass, like complete pros at it. So aren't they already empowered? Well, for me, women empowerment weren't actually two words which I knew a lot about, because I never felt that I needed to be empowered. But growing up, I come from the state of Haryana. I never stayed there till I went to college, and I chose to educate myself at a college which is a girls' college in rural Haryana, because I believed something that my father told me, that if you go to the remotest of places, as a doctor, you will learn the most. And I wanted to learn. But when I went to my college, it was completely different from what I had imagined. And that's when, as an 18-year-old, I had an idea to do something when it came to menstruation. Because at that point of time, all I understood was health. And I felt that, well, menstruation, if women are more comfortable about menstruation and we are able to take care of their hygiene, then definitely it won't boil down to diseases such as pelvic inflammatory diseases and your RTIs, and that could, RTI, reproductive tract infection, not the RTI you guys know. So that's how I started my project. And so in the local areas, they started calling it as Shakti when I would go, because Shakti, you all know that every woman is considered as a form of Shakti, and Shakti means power and to empower. And that's how, more than just a health project, it became an empowerment project for me. I showed the project to the Miss India team. They really liked it. It wasn't a project at that time, it was just an idea. I was doing awareness programs with the help of my parents. But after winning Miss India, you have something called as Beauty with a Purpose at Miss World. Beauty with a Purpose is the vision and mission of Miss World. That's what Miss World stands for. It gives young girls like me, not just me, but all 130 countries that represent at Miss World an opportunity to bring a change in their country or in their communities. And well, Miss India wanted to work on my project. So I worked across 3 states in North India, more than 20 village communities, and we created women entrepreneurs, so entrepreneurs back in. So we encouraged women from the village to source sanitary pads from the Walmart. So I collaborated with Walmart India and a local manufacturer of sanitary pads. And so these women would purchase low-cost sanitary pads and sell them in their village, because more than the lack of awareness and the high cost of sanitary pads, which women felt, it was the taboo that was associated with it. And women would feel uncomfortable to buy sanitary pads from mostly a man who's a shopkeeper. So that was my short-term project. I remember being shortlisted as a semi-finalist for Beauty with a Purpose at Miss World, which is the biggest award when you go for a Miss World competition. And I was looking at my project. 3.5 months, I traveled across those states. It wasn't easy to go to these places. I went to a village where children didn't even have clothes to wear. So I could imagine that if they can't afford proper clothes, how can they afford sanitary pads? I mean, that's the kind of mentality that they have over there. And as a 20-year-old, to see so much, it just makes you want to do so much more, because I'm still growing, I'm still learning, I'm still in that stage where I'm figuring out what I truly want to do in life. And that's when I found my purpose. And in the top 20, there were amazing projects. But when I saw my project come up, I had tears in my eyes because I couldn't believe that I had done it, of course, with the help of a huge team. And I won Beauty with a Purpose. And I'm very proud to say that I'm the first Miss World who also won Beauty with a Purpose. After which, of course, not only my project, after winning Miss World, we were here in India. This year's Beauty with a Purpose tour started from my home country, from my project, where we traveled for 9 days. Not only me and the Miss World team, but we had continental winners. We had young girls. So they aren't politicians, they aren't powerful people, but they are just young girls, just like me. They're students, their daughters. One of them is still in school. And they all came down, and we all were traveling across India, trying to spread awareness, trying to create different systems. We met with people called as Akar Innovations. Most of you must be knowing about them. And we met these tribal communities at the Bhutan border. We traveled a lot, but we met up with politicians, the Honorable Vice President and our External Affairs Minister. They were kind enough to meet us and support us on our project. After which I traveled to different countries. I can go on and on about that, but these are young women who are doing this. They are young women who are bringing this change. And that in itself makes us feel so empowered. I think a lot of people ask me this question, that how did you prepare for Miss World? When did you start preparing for Miss World? And I have no answer to it. And when I think about it, I think it's 20 years. And I know I speak like a 30-year-old and I think like a 60-year-old, but I'm 20 years old. Believe me on that. And I think it's 20 years of being a woman who never treated herself differently just because she was a girl, of growing up in a family where she didn't know the meaning of the words women empowerment because she never felt she needed it. And I think I was fortunate. And all I can say is that I pray that in the future, no one knows the meaning of women empowerment, because we don't need these words. Women are equal to men. Thank you.
Thank you to the gorgeous Manushi. Beauty with Purpose, indeed. Our next session is the new leadership imperative, getting women on board. This session will explore ways of expanding the pool of women on the boards in companies in corporate India. Statistics say that more than half of Indian companies remain in default of the SEBI regulation that says appoint at least one woman on your board. Please welcome our moderator for this upcoming session, Sandeep Gurumurthy, Managing Editor, ET Now. She is the founder and MD of Spark Leadership UK, focused on developing CEOs and board executives for the world's leading companies. Her books include The Changing Culture of Leadership, Women Leaders' Voices, based on women leaders across 20 industries in the UK. Ladies and gentlemen, Elizabeth Kofi. Norway has been a pioneer in gender reforms at the corporate level. May I welcome the Head of Department of Labour Market and Social Affairs at the Confederation of Norwegian Enterprise, the main representative organization for Norwegian employers. Put your hands together for Christina Julemhagen. Welcome, Christina. May I welcome once again on stage, please, Andrea Jung, who sits on the boards of Apple and General Electric. Completing this panel is the former chairman of SEBI, the former chairman of IDBI and UTI, the founder of Excellence Enablers, a corporate governance advisory firm and an eminent corporate advisor. May I welcome Mr. M. Damodaram.
The question is, how do we get there? I think that's the most important imperative, and hopefully we'll cover some distance over the next 25 minutes. Andrea, if I could start with you, because you've been in the boards of several iconic companies. Help us understand, how do sort of decisions and conversations change the moment there is better women representation in boards of large companies?
Sure. Well, I've had the privilege and the journey, as I spoke about a little bit earlier this morning, of being on some big corporate boards for 20 years. And certainly things change. You know, it is not a fast sprint. It does take time. And so over the 20 years, I've been able to see progress. And it doesn't start with 5 people on a board in General Electric, which is, we had 5 women on the board when I was on the board last, but it didn't start off that way. So it doesn't happen, again, overnight. But gradually, you have to start somewhere. There are the numbers of women on boards, and then there's the culture around the board table. But you have to get the numbers first. I mean, you can't start changing the culture until you actually have 1, and then 2, and then 3, and hopefully more women on the board over time. So the discussions change. Women and men approach subject matters differently, and that is healthy. It's constructive tension. I don't think a board with 100% women would be healthy either. I think a board should marry the community, it should marry the population of the world, it should marry the profile of the customers or clients of the firm. And so, again, it is a matter of having enough women who can approach the subject matter a little bit differently, listen differently, weigh in differently, and in the beginning, it can be awkward, but over time, it becomes the norm.
First get the numbers, then change the culture. Mr.
Yes.
Damodaran, you know, though India seems like a small number, but we've sort of made some progress over the last few years, largely because of the regulation that mandated, you know, the participation of at least 1 woman director on the board. Does that work? Is that enough? What more needs to be done?
No, clearly it doesn't work. But first, let me make one basic point. We are not looking for women directors. We are looking for directors who also happen to be women. The minute you say you're looking for women directors, the entire discussion, debate, call it what you will, takes another trajectory altogether. I don't want to go there. Let me split this into 3 questions and try and respond telegraphically. Do women add value to boards? Short answer, yes. The long answer will take much more than the time you have at your disposal, so I'll just give you 3 reasons. More focus, more objectivity, and their presence on boards makes the men perform better. The men sit up straight, the men don't get drawn into tangential discussions, And therefore, the board as a collective definitely does its job much, much better. Why is it not happening? Because many managements, as well as clubby boards, I mean, let me look at it from the point of view of managements first. Managements, many managements, I won't say all of them, look at boards as either a procedural nuisance or a substantive diversion. So they really don't want boards. They think we'll go through the motions of dealing with this bunch of guys. So they're not going to look at who adds value to boards unless you're looking to extract value from boards and see the board as a seat of wisdom. If that doesn't happen, you're not getting started. Then the men who have had a very comfortable existence in boardrooms, you come there, you have your tea, your coffee, your normal jokes, occasionally discuss agenda items, and when the time is up for lunch or something, you go. And suddenly all this changes the minute you get a lady who comes to the board, has read the papers, asked the questions that needs to be asked, and none of this is fiction. As I look at the audience, I can see at least one colleague of mine from a board who came into the board after I did, and I must say, electrified the board by her presence, her contribution, etc. But that's something that I will discuss separately with her. Will not discuss with her. How do you get these people on board?
Right.
The best way not to get them on board is to have women director training programs. That's the best way not to get them on board. Because the minute you put them together, you're already bracketing them in one group. You think they need special training, as if the men hit the ground running when they get into boardrooms. Forget that. You take a large number of women who have the potential to make it to boardrooms. You also get the men. And I'm not in favor of training independent directors separately, non-independents. They all have to coexist in one boardroom.
Right.
So you get them together and then see how quickly you're able to develop them.
Sure.
We've tried it, and I can assure you it works. The minute you run an exclusive women directors program, you're not even getting started. That's the way to go.
Sure. Christina, I want your thoughts on the fact that Norway and many European countries have sort of introduced this mandate-based approach. Norway, for instance, has 40% mandatory board representation for women. How has that worked, and does that necessarily lead to a trickle-down effect, which is also a desired outcome to see more women in the workforce?
Very good question. In Norway, we have had the boardroom quota of 40% for 12 years now, and all the large listed companies comply. It has worked well in the sense that the companies have had no trouble finding qualified women, and the women contribute, and the board members, both men and women, are happy with the situation. However, the trickle-down effect has not happened at all. So at management level, we are just as few women as we were before the law was changed. And this was not the aspirations of the politicians. So to me, this is a sign that focusing only on the board will not bring about the change we want. Still in Norway, the percentage of female CEOs in the large companies is 5%. 5%. And this is in a country where female labor market participation is 76, which is amazing. But we haven't succeeded in bringing up women up the corporate ladder quite to the top. So it's not that I'm against focusing on women in boards, because I think we should be doing that. But we shouldn't let our focus on board make us forget what's really important, namely focusing on bringing up women at all levels of an organization. And only then will we have a good pool of selecting candidates for the top management jobs in the future.
That's an interesting take. You're saying focusing on the board alone is not enough and doesn't necessarily lead to desired outcomes. Elizabeth, you've worked with CEOs and their successors. Have you seen a change in their approach when it comes to gender diversity? I know you inherently believe that there is a difference in the leadership style of men in boards and women in board, and often there's a conflict. Could you share some sort of experience, some anecdotes on how that really works?
Yes, well, what I would say is that I live in the UK, but I work internationally. In the UK, as soon as there's been a big focus recently on getting more women on boards, and we did not put a quota into place, but there were targets, because that was a preferred route. But since then, it's become, if you will,
fashionable for senior men in CEO jobs to be thinking about this. And many men, of course, in CEO jobs have daughters, or they have wives who are in the workforce. So at home, they're beginning to hear about all the challenges that women, young or older, have, and it's more personalized. So there is a movement, and it's becoming more and more fashionable, I think, for men to be thinking about these things and taking steps to change the numbers. From my point of view, the numbers is a step, but it's not the most important thing, because the culture is what actually makes it work or not. You can put women onto a board, and if they're not accepted by the board, they will be pushed out, or if they're not actually enjoying the experience, they will leave. So the numbers issue is not the only thing. It's actually how do you get those men and women to work together effectively when there's been more of a kind of bro culture, as it's being referred to now in Silicon Valley. And you've sort of described some elements of it, which is a more kind of casual version. And I want to just make a quick point to our audience here and say I've been going to these kind of conferences for 20 years. And I want to say thank you to all the men who are here supporting and actually interested in this, because 20 years ago there were no men in the audience and there were no men on stage. So hooray, men. Because yes, women are the ones who are going to be pushing for this because it's about us, but actually it's the men who are still in the corridors of power. Those are the ones in the positions of power. So as many advocates as we can get, the better.
Right. Andrea, let's talk about the economic rationale for women on the board. We touched upon it briefly, and there is a Credit Suisse report which speaks about how return on equity is lesser in all male boards compared to boards that have female participation. But I want you to weigh in on that. And the contrary question is, why do we need to justify women's presence on boards with this whole economic rationale argument? Because we don't give an economic rationale every time we induct a man on a board.
Well, let me just start with the second question first, because that's right. I mean, it is counterintuitive to make an economic rationale just for one gender. But I can just speak, if you even move it to gender and race, which are issues in the United States. When there's such underrepresentation, it becomes one factor in creating the logic and the decision-making power. So in a perfect world, it is completely unnecessary and counterintuitive. When there is such significant underrepresentation of any segment being represented in terms of full participation on the board, I think then you devolve to saying there is an economic reason for this, and it's not just if companies do better and they, perform against the S&P or the, or the Dow or whatever it may be. But I think you have to look at your client base. I mean, I use the example in passenger cars in an automobile industry where, in many cases, if you are predominantly men on the board and in management, because I think to Christina's point, it's not just the board. I mean, the board is only one constituent, but you really have to go all the way down in management. But if in some countries, 80% of the future projected decisions on who is making the decision on a passenger car, the color, the model, et cetera, are women in many countries around the world, then how can management and a board not represent the consumer and the ultimate decision? And that's true in category and in industry after another.
I want you to touch upon the Indian context. Do you believe that Indian promoters have been lazy in finding women on board? We have a few iconic women leaders who are on boards of several companies, but do you sense a little bit of laziness and reluctance to actually go out there and find? I mean, surely in a nation of 1.2 billion people, it can't be so tough to find 150, 200, very eminent women board directors.
You're a very charitable man. You said they're somewhat lazy. I think they're very, very lazy. In a country which has as many people as we have, and we're talking in terms of the power of 500 million, finding a few hundred people, if you look around, is not going to be difficult. Let's step back a little. When independent directors were mandated, a lot of promoters said, where will we find them? Where are the independent directors? Today, nobody's talking about it. Good, bad, indifferent, you found them. I'm not saying they're all great guys, but the arithmetic of board composition got addressed. Look around. Have you looked at universities? Have you looked at professors in institutes of management? Why do you go to the 10 or 15 women who have had exceptionally good careers and you want them to come on your board, how many boards will they sit on? And then, you're also insulting them by reaching out to people who are so distinguished, by telling them post the reservation, I'm now reaching out to you. Are you telling someone who's done exceptionally well over maybe 2 decades, 3 decades, that I am looking at you because of tokenism and not of talent? And I didn't look at you before the act came into force? I think that is hugely demeaning. But you want to look around. You go to universities. You go to institutes of management, you go to the media, provided they don't write about what happens in boardrooms. But there are exceptional women in this country. You don't want them. Is it that you're threatened because they will come in? I ducked your first question when you said how many women should there be, because I wanted to come to that question a little later. Every board should have at least 2 women directors, at least, of whom at least one should be independent.
Right.
This business of getting one woman on a board, and everyone from the chowkidar to the chairman referring to her as a woman director is not going to... Have you ever heard the expression male director or men director? I've never heard that. So why does somebody say woman director? I think that it's out of the... So you need to compose your board better. One day, maybe we will have this composition. Just
indeed. Elizabeth, you believe that the tipping point is 3 women women on a board of 10 or 12. Why is that important? Help our audience understand why is that 3 a critical number?
So the research internationally about majority groups and minority groups has shown with every majority and every minority, and you need 25% of a group for that group to have a voice. But 30% actually starts to change the culture of the place. And so that is one of the reasons why there's a lot of push in many cultures, and certainly in the UK, there is a club called the 30% Club that is pushing for all boards to have 30%. Norway has gone for a number of 40%, actually. When you think about the fact that we have, in the world, 51% of the population are women, it's still low relative to the talent that's in that female pool. I want to pick up on the point that you were talking about the extraordinary women in India and frankly all over the world, and why is it so difficult to find women directors. My experience with this is that what good leadership looks like and how you define that determines what kind of people you think deserve to be in the boardroom. And what my experience is that many men, not all men, but many men talk about leadership as war. They talk about it as a fight. And women talk about leadership more like what I would call a tiger mother. They're very ambitious for their children, but they're nurturing in the way that they actually approach this. The research shows that women are excellent at building teams and making those teams perform, which is kind of like a tiger mother, a kind version of a tiger mother. So sometimes a senior man can misinterpret a woman who's actually performing very well as too naive, as too soft, as too gentle. But actually, the women I know have cores of steel. They are fierce, even if they look beautiful and they're wearing fantastically colored saris. They are, our mothers, our grandmothers were tough, right? And they were pushing us. I would say most of us are familiar with women who are like that, mothers who are pushing, yet very nurturing and caring and warm. Mm-hmm. So that is a really big piece of it. And your point before about developing women, I develop both men and women, and both actually need development to make this work, because the women have to understand what the men's expectations are, otherwise they don't get invited into the board, unless there's a quota. So somebody like Andrea knows about that, because she's had to actually perform in front of those boards who have chosen to take her on board. But equally, the men need to understand that if they want to get the best out of the women, they have to understand that the style is going to look different. They're going to sound different. Their ideas are going to be different. And actually, that's why you want them. So you have to make it so that they want to stay there, because otherwise these fabulous women have choice, and they will either go to another company or they will leave and start their own companies.
Right. Christina, so how do we solve the problem? In the case of Norway, which has got, which has done remarkable progress, one of the reasons is because, female participation in the workforce is very high, over 70%, whereas in India it's about 25%. Given that context, how do we solve this problem?
Well, as a political scientist myself, I do believe in policy choices and the importance of policy choices in this respect. In Norway in the 1970s, when I was born, we were a mid-ranging country when it came to female labor market participation. We were mid-ranging in the OECD. And then we introduced a year's parental leave, a third of it being reserved for the father. We introduced full coverage of daycare, and those policy choices made female labor market representations spike. Those were important policy choices for Norway. I don't know what the right policy choices for India will be, but I think that's one question that you should be asking yourself. I definitely think that these numbers are, we can influence them, which the Norwegian experience shows. And the reason why we, from the employers' organizations, care so much about this is that this is of immense economic value to Norway. You can just imagine having 76% of the women being part of the labor force. It brings the state so much revenue, it brings the companies talent and ambition, and I can't really overestimate how much importance this is to Norway.
Having been a director for many years on U.S. boards where there is not a policy mandate and seeing sort of the glacial speed, I find it interesting being on a European board where the mandate at the EU, as I said, and specifically in Germany, accelerated what was a glacial speed. I mean, we're talking about what could have taken 10 years happened in 2. So would it happen? Maybe. Will this accelerate? And we don't have that time, decades and years, absolutely, and I've seen it sort of firsthand. So I've converted to someone who believes that policy change is important, and I think it will absolutely change the nature by close to a decade.
So both of you feel policy intervention is important. Do you also believe that the push needs to come from, asset owners? It needs to come from financial investors. They need to sort of, insist on having a greater, because at the end of the day, they are sort of, in some sense, stakeholders of the company. Do you think they really don't care beyond earnings per share? Damodaran?
I think all of us know that the presence of women on boards adds value. But has it been established in terms of studies in the Indian context? The minute you get that, if you get enough of a causal relationship that's established, the investors will push for it. When we talked about corporate governance 15 years ago, it was thought to be an expenditure. The fact that it is an investment and that you get a governance premium, that recognition came later. So the understanding that there is value that resides in getting the board rightly composed with a few women on it, if you can establish that relationship scientifically, it's not difficult. No one has worked on it.
So there's been a lot of research over the last 25, 30 years. And actually, I was invited to India for the first time in 2003 to speak at a conference hosted by the Times of India, which was focusing on the topic of whether female CEOs were more ethical than their male counterparts. And I was asked to give the keynote speech on this the very first time I came to India. I was terrified because the research actually shows women are more risk averse around the world. And if you think about it, it makes sense. We're mothers. We want to keep our children alive. So we make sure we anticipate risk and make sure that they stay alive. But what that does is, on a board context, they're more compliant from a regulatory point of view. So that's a huge benefit, and Catalyst in the US actually did their first piece of research on this with the Canadian boards. So I suspect you could probably do a parallel study here in India on that. But going back to your point about the investors, part of the reason a McKinsey report and the Credit Suisse report that you talk about, which are consistently showing better performance of boards that have more women on them, that's because investors want to hear that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that they perk up. Oh, we're going to make more money. So we're going to be more compliant, but we're going to make more money. And that's going to make them interested in this.
Right. And Andrea, quick last word from you. You know, since you are on the board of Apple, I have to ask you this. Silicon Valley, in some sense, has been a sort of trigger for the whole movement against bro culture. Do you think that having more women on the board will fundamentally change that, and how?
Absolutely. I don't think it's the only answer. I think probably you're hearing from all of us that it is one element, and I don't think the magic bullet is having 30% women on boards, but it is part of a constituent. They have the responsibility for the culture, the strategy, and the people in a company. That is the role of a director. And without that group having the responsibility and the bearing the weight, how can you have a culture change in the company if there's no culture change on the board? So I think it's mandatory. I think it's happening, and it has to. And I think that that genie's sort of out of the bottle and is not going to be put back in, because Silicon Valley, like every other industry now, there'll be zero tolerance.
All right, I'm afraid completely.
Just a quick thought. Because liabilities have increased, because responsibilities have increased, there are a lot of men who are telling potential, directors who are women, that the boardroom is a minefield, be careful. But they're happily existing in that minefield themselves. So every last barrier is being erected to see that the complexion of the boardroom doesn't change. That you have to deal with.
It's time we break these barriers. Thank you all so much. Thank you to this wonderful panel of experts for showing a way ahead on increasing more women participation in the board. Big round of applause for this panel. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, panelists. That was indeed an illuminating discussion. Not just helping women go up the corporate ladder, but stay there, and really nurturing directors who are women. An important takeaway also from our last panel was on the role of women and what really they contribute, whether it is on a board or at home or at work. That has a psychological and perhaps even a gender connotation. This leads us to our next session, a fascinating talk, the transgender bender.
By a concept or a notion of this size 0 is perfect, but that you're even perfect at a size 10, a size 20, or even beyond that.
I love women of all shapes and sizes. I celebrate the individuality that we are as women.
I'd like to call India's first plus-size international model, cosmetics expert and PhD, Dr. Mona Veronica Campbell, on stage, please. Dr. Mona will be in conversation with Sonali Krishna, Senior News Editor, ET Now. A huge welcome to you both.
Well, we're going to dive straight into the conversation because I'm super excited about interviewing Mona Veronica Campbell. What a journey it's been. She's all of 28, born in Vijayawada as Adapalla Mohan Naidu, and as a young boy, very, very early in your, childhood, I think you had a realization, Mona, that something was amiss, something was not right. Talk to me about it, about what your inner feelings were in terms of the fact that you were a woman stuck in a man's body.
I just struggled quite a lot. So when I just got an idea when I am like 9, 10 years, I just walked into my father. I told him that I have something issue with my body. So they knew that because I just grew up with my sister. So I always, most of the time, put up her clothes, you know, shoes, whatever. So my mom knew about my feminism. So she always supported me. I think my mom is the backbone of my entire family, initially. Definitely my sister as well. When I turned like 14, so that is very quite tough time because my father used to put me up in boys' schools. It's quite hard to be with them. So I just ran away, dominating boys even at the age of 14, 15. So I just asked my father that I don't want to be in any hostels or I want to stay back at home. So he initially thought of no, it's difficult. No, you will be not disciplined if you're not going to be listening to us. You're supposed to be in a hostel. So, and my mom used to convince all the time, please, don't pressure her to, into, traumatic condition, whatever. So I just came back home. One fine day, I spoke to my father, serious about it. So my dad told me that.
What did you tell your father?
I told that.
And by the way, her parents are in the audience.
Oh,
today.
thank you. My parents are here. I'm proud to have my parents here today because they supported me all walk of my life. But definitely, initially, my dad is my enemy, usually, in every family.
Absolutely, coming from a South Indian family.
Yeah, coming from a South Indian family, my dad initially not, supported me to, get into my own decision. Definitely, he said me that I'm going to take you a psychological doctor and figure it out something. Then later on, like 17 years, I decided I want to break my cocoon. So I took help of my mom and my sister. So then I decided that I want to move to Hyderabad and pursue my fashion studies. So when I reached Hyderabad, initially like 1.5 years, my dad told me that you were just going to do fashion studies in one of the best schools in India to do some tailoring. I said, honey, it's a NIFT. I'm doing my graduation from one of the best universities in India. You're not supposed to deny me. Then later on, my father just walked after 4 semesters, how to pay my needs, how to work part-time jobs in a couple of organizations to pay my fees with the help of my
How
mom.
old were you at this point?
I am just 19.
So tell me, let me flash back. At 19, had you decided that you want to be a woman?
Yeah, definitely, yes, because it's a peak time because I prefer my fashion studies, it's in my blood. And one thing, it's very easy to cope up with my education and just be who I am.
Right.
Because I have a couple of friends into the same industry at the time. So later on, after 2 semesters, my father walked down and then he said, okay, fine. So I think since the day my dad decided, he told me before he's leaving my hostel, so he told me one thing, do whatever you want. I just support you totally. So he left back to his hometown. And one fine day, I came as India's first transgender beauty pageant. And I was all over the news edition. And my dad's best friend who walked into my home, he asked that, are you guys alive? I was like, and actually they kept this secret for 6 years. Who would parents just make me happy all the time? He asked my father that, I think you guys, passed away. I thought you might have done some suicide. And what your daughter is doing around the world, how you're dealing with. So my dad was silent. He told me that it doesn't really matter for me. It's a boy or a girl. For me, she's my daughter. So I accept her. Since the day, trust me, he left all his friends. He had only 3 things in his life. He tells that me and my sister is 2 eyes for him. He tells that I don't want any friends. He only spend time at his temple. And the third thing, I don't want any relatives who does not support our family.
Well, big applause for the man in the audience and, of course, the mother as well. Been very supporting of Mona. Just want to navigate a little bit, Mona, into your professional career.
Okay.
Right? And I want to talk to you about the fact that how you became India's first transgender plus size model. The journey must not be very easy because, we live in a very harsh and judgmental world. So tell me about that journey where, you managed to even go to London to study fashion. That was amazing.
Yeah. So when I'm done with my 4 years graduation from NIFT Hyderabad, and I'm only one student from the campus who's selected for London Schools of Fashion for textiles and fashion. So I got a scholarship. That's my first highest paid scholarship from the university. So I left London, and then I was there for 2.5 years. So then later on, I was in a relationship, to be frank. So he's a doctor. So then I moved with him to Toronto, Canada, so that where I began my journey working full-time entrepreneur with makeup brand called MAC and Bobbi Brown. So I worked with them for 2.5 years. Then later on, I'm just back India. I got a thought that I want to start with my own makeup label. So I came back to India in 2014. So I began my label. It's been like 6 months. I took the Best Makeup Artist Award across the globe. Working in India. It's been a year. I worked with the best elite celebrities in India across the globe as well. I used to work with Kim Kardashian. I worked with Kate Moss in Canada. So I have a couple of friends in Canada. While I'm working there, I got an opportunity to work as a plus-size model because due to hormones, I put on weight. Okay. So, body positive. I don't know about what people talk about India about body positive. People say you're moti, you are fat, chick, whatever. But still I have followers. I don't care about it. It was an audition. Lakme was like upscale on that. Lakme is inviting plus size models. We're looking for some professional model who can represent our country. I was like, oh, this is going to be mine. Definitely mine. So I walked into audition, and I can see gorgeous, curvaceous, bootylicious women, 900 people in the audition room. I was like, oh God, so many women out there. And the first time I walked into audition, I just only, heard with a lot of women saying that you look hot. I was like, okay, okay, thank you. So I took so much of positive energy. The whole day, 7 rounds keep going on. They're not calling me. The first round is done. I'm sitting in the corner.
At this point, I want to interrupt and also tell the audience that she was also brave enough to put transgender as her sex at all interviews. Am I correct?
Actually, I worked in different firms, like into cosmetics, into aviation, as a model. I never got an opportunity to tell about my gender because when I applied my first job in aviation industry, they asked me that, who bothers about what about your gender? It's all about how you communicate, how you work with us. So I feel very bad because they don't want me to tell about my gender because I'm working with planes, traveling more than 48 countries in 28 years old. I'm 28 years, I've been more than 48 countries. So I don't want to just hide that. How long? I used to tell to my father, is it boring? I'm not a new human being in this world. I'm just a common human being and I want to explore, I am who I am. So I got an opportunity. I think Lakme, I want to thank to Lakme IMG and I want to thank to, I think, Wendell Rodrigues. He's the man that, today is someone whom I am here. And all auditions were done and finally they called me. They said me that you're going to represent our country and you're going to open and close my show. I was like, it's my dream come true. Because being yours as a plus size model in India, people hardly think about it. People hardly encourage you. People hardly get the new concepts to be done. But today I'm traveling across the globe, working with huge brands, and I'm occupied so far next 1 year. So that's about me into this model.
Mona, you make it sound so easy, right? You make it sound so easy. Yeah. But clearly it wasn't that easy. So tell us a little bit about, the fact that you had to face and deal with people who were constantly judging you and how you dealt with that.
I just want to share one of the personal experience. Nothing wrong to put it across in such a beautiful moment because everyone knew that Mona Veronica Campbell is a model, she's a doctor, all that fancy tags. I don't want to be a fancy tag. I want to be a common woman like other here. My dad had a best friend. I told that he walked into my home and told that, you guys are alive, blah, blah, blah. So that particular person's son fall in love with me. So it's 5 years of my transformation, a lot of jiggling with my body and flaunting across the globe. He came after 6 years of all this incident. He asked me that he offered a marriage proposal with his son. So I was like, I told him that I deny. I don't want to see. My father just got so much of respect today. It's not about I'm a transgender child or a daughter. He always tells me that you are the strongest backbone to the family. And today, you know, every time I take a decision. But one thing I have, you know, that some guilt feeling is that my dad wanted me to be a doctor. You know, that's typical medicine on in his head. One daughter has to be engineer, one daughter has to be a doctor. So I got All India 90th rank in MCET, where we study in East and West Godavari. Maybe in India, it's All India, I got 90th rank of medicine. My dad was so proud about it and told all over the globe that, oh my God, she got it, she's gonna get it. So I broke his dream. I told that I want to be a fancy chick, I want to be into fashion. See, his mind is that fashion is all about tailoring. Yeah. And today, in front of my father, I put that sexy, lacy lingerie and walk on the shows or do. My father just tried to protect me in some extent. I'm glad that I have a very wonderful parents and quite support from my father. So coming to, in my mind that I have something that I want to fulfill his dream. So I'm keep traveling, working back to back. I never had a time, saving money to fulfill my parents' dream. And today I'm proud that I fulfill all my dreams of my parents. And I told my father that I'm going to do something surprise for you. He asked me that what? A couple of years back when I got admission in one of the best universities in the world for PhD, I told him that I got admission and I got 70% scholarship from the university. And then when I can see his tears, one of the best moments in my life. I never got, there are two things I never got from my father where every daughter or every son want to be emotional to their parents. My father never showed his emotional feeling to me any single day. When I walked with the Lakme Fashion Week, my father walked back to after the runway, he walked and he came to me. When you're walking, I could not listen anything. They only saying Mona Veronica, Mona Veronica. It's a show, it's an official show, but people screaming my name. It feels a lot of positive that people accept me who I am. They love me who I am. Until the Lakme Fashion Week, no one knew that I'm a transgender. Not even Wendell Rodrigues don't know him that I'm a transgender. All the panel closed, all the fittings is happening, and then he come down to know that Veronica is a trans model. Then he called me, he's in New York, he just called me. He told me that you opening and closing my show. And you are the perfect face of runway. I don't want any cow or buffalo to open the show. So the brand, what he's dealing, they denied the fact that I'm opening the show because I'm a trans woman, because the brand is very conservative. So I'm being honest, Wendell fought 17 days. And he made the best day of my life, where I think the treatment is like absolutely amazing. Working with Lakme IMG is a dream. Any model can love to be the part of Lakme. And if you're a Lakme model, you are the best across the globe. It's on end of the day IMG agency. So I'm glad I worked with him. And after that, he decided that he wanted to write a book about my life. So I think someone's interest to know. So I walked into his place in Goa, so we discussed so many things. So he have a couple of plans. See, supporting is very important. You know, it could be your brothers, sisters, it could be tenants or neighbors or any kind of fashion or media. And I have to thank to all the media here for supporting.
You deserve it. Don't thank us. You really do deserve it. The media doesn't give any attention if they don't deserve it. So you truly do. But on that note, quickly, because it's a ladies' forum and you're a fashionista, before I end this conversation, 3 tips, beauty tips that you think women should, use every day to just beautify and be a fashionista like you are?
Let's even just give a little bit of just a little bit of for men as well. See, basically, when we use mascara, you know, mascara, after the mascara, the spool will get dry, we'll throw it off. Men can use to shave with the beard to cover the white stuff, and women can do the eyebrow. That is one of the best tip. And most of the people says that, oh God, I have a pores, I have spots, I want to look flawless. It's a very simple thing is that no need to go with any fancy salons and spend a lot of money, like coming to our places and asking me. It's a simple thing, take ice cubes, rub on your face as much as you can, apply a moisturizer, just do makeup to look flawless for the day. And the last, I don't want to give a makeup tip, it's quite boring. Yeah, if you're talking about the fashion, I just want to give the message to women, be bold, be beautiful, be confident who you are. Live and let live, spread love, not hatred. Just be. That's what I really want to tell everyone.
Amazing. Well, Mona, modeling is all about attitude, but I think you conduct your life with attitude, and we salute you for that. Thank you so much, and if we can have the parents of Mona stand up so we can applaud them too.
Where are my mom and dad?
Behind her. Thank you so much. Hope you enjoyed this session.
Thank you, Sonali. Mona, Veronica, I want a selfie with you later. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, thank you for being so patient, so responsive, so involved. It's been an action-packed morning. I'm happy to say that we are running on time. Of course, it's a women's forum. It's time for beyond thought for food to actual food on your plates. We have a delicious lunch laid out for you in the foyer and the adjoining rooms in Gulmohar and Jacaranda. Eat, drink, and feel free to check out our beautiful installations. Also, share your pictures and your messages over Facebook and Twitter. Tag us at #ET Women's Forum. See you in 45 minutes.